Welcome to CrashMagic, and we're back with another card trick. This one uses an ESP set of cards, but it can easily be adapted to work with the standard deck. We'll start with the performance, and then straight after is a tutorial where I'll go through exactly how this trick works and how you can learn it. Instead of a regular pack of cards, we're going to use an ESP pack of cards for a change. So on these cards we've got a plus sign, a square, a star, wavy lines and a circle, and these images are repeated throughout the pack. In a second I'm going to get you to select one of these cards and we'll see if we can make a connection through these cards. We don't need to use all these cards, so to cut the number down a bit I'm going to deal these cards down onto the table, and if you say stop whenever you like. Let's say maybe you say stop here, so we can put these cards to the side. You could of course have said stop at any point, in which case we would have had more or less cards here. And now we're going to deal these cards into two piles, and then I'm going to ask you to select one of these piles. Okay, so if you were here, at this point I'd ask you to select one of these piles, and to simulate your selection we'll use this dice. So this pile will be 1, 2, 3, and this one will be 4, 5 and 6, and to be totally transparent, 1, 2 and 3 you get this pile and we discard this one, or if we roll 4, 5, 6 you will get this pile and we will discard this pile. So we have rolled a 6, so you get this pile. Is that the pile that you would have chosen? And remember, all these cards have been shuffled. You chose this pile though, and if you take the top card, again all the other cards in this pile are random, and you could potentially have ended up with any of these cards, but you have chosen this card, which is a square. Now I made a prediction way before we started this experiment, and in this box is just one card, and if we take a look we have a match, and that is an ESP connection. So that was the trick, and if you liked it and want to know how it's done, this is the tutorial. So I'm using a classic ESP set of cards, 25 cards with 5 symbols, each repeated 5 times, but you could easily adapt this to use normal cards instead. And we need a small setup before we start our performance, which is to place 2 of the same symbol on top of the pack. You can use any of the symbols, but I'm going to use the square. So our 2 squares go on top, and now we need our prediction. So I have another square hidden in here. This can either be an extra card if you have one, or if not, one of the squares from the 25 is fine to use because the number of cards we have in the pack isn't important. So we're now ready to begin, and you can start by showing the face of some of the cards to your spectator as you explain what an ESP deck is and as you introduce the trick. Of course you ideally don't want to show those top 2 cards. You can then do some false shuffles if you like. The easiest way is just to do an overhand shuffle, pull off the top 2 cards singly, then carry on with the overhand shuffle, then shuffle again, and then once you get towards the end and we get to the bottom 2 cards again, make sure you pull those off singly, which will put the 2 squares back on top again. But you don't actually need to do false shuffles if you don't want. You could just go straight into the trick. Then you're going to deal the cards from the top one at a time onto the table until your spectator says stop, or you could even get your spectators to deal the cards themselves and stop when they like. It doesn't matter how many cards are dealt as long as someone doesn't try and trip you up by shouting stop after 1 or 2 cards. If they do, you can just explain you need a few more cards than that, or even better, if you've got more than one spectator you could involve them and ask them to say stop as you carry on dealing some more cards. The rest of the cards get discarded, and then we deal these cards into 2 piles. Now you could of course again do a false shuffle at this point, keeping those 2 force cards on the bottom of this pile, but you don't need to. You can just go straight into dealing these cards into 2 piles, which of course is going to put our force cards, our 2 squares, one on top of each pile. So now you're going to ask your spectator to select one of these piles. Now anyone with card trick knowledge might expect this is going to be a magician's force at this point, which of course it's not, so it's really nice you can be clear that whichever pile they choose is the one they're going to get. We can discard the other pile, which you can just put on top of the other cards, but I prefer to put them underneath instead, because that means we can spread and that top card isn't automatically going to be a square. Of course, just by chance it still could be, as it is on this occasion. So now you ask your spectator to take the top card from their chosen pile. Again, you can of course show the other cards are just a random selection, and then the spectator can look at their chosen card before you reveal your matching prediction card. Well, that is the end of this video, and I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please like and subscribe. Any comments, put them down below, and see you soon.